Come on in and stay a while here on League Unlocked. My name's Eric. Thank you guys for joining us. And after what was an absolutely electric, insane, and crazy 5 or 6 days, probably even a full week of off-season madness, the last couple of days it has slowed down and died a little bit. We obviously had the G2 and Fnatic announcements, but those were a part of the earliest of rumors heading into the offseason. Everyone was pretty much expecting it to happen, so not as big a surprise as when Jacob Wolf initially dropped the Wolf bomb that talked about that rumor. So really, aside from that, there hasn't been a whole lot going on the last couple of days, but we can still look at, because probably the majority of the big moves have been made now. Now it's just filling out the other roster spots. And yesterday we looked at the big winners from the offseason in North America so far, in the likes of Liquid, 100 Thieves, and Golden Guardians. Well, now we're looking at some of the other major regions that have had major shakeups, and we're starting in Europe because, I mean, yesterday was when the big news came down that G2 and Fnatic looking for new mid laners and bringing in new mid laners in 2019. And obviously the G2 Perks role swap is far and away the biggest move, at least in EU so far. But does that mean that G2 has had the best offseason so far? Because that is a high-risk, high-reward move that they have made. And if it doesn't pay off, then they've probably set themselves back a huge amount. I mean, what are you going to do if Perks doesn't actually work out as an AD carry? But we know that on paper, this team should be absolutely disgusting. And you should say that they've won the offseason, if not just because of how good the team looks on paper. Yes, again, you have to account for, can Perks actually adjust to an entirely new role here in 2019? But also just the banter between them and Fnatic, the fans. I know people are upset with caps, but there's no doubt that when G2 play Fnatic or when G2 make their LEC debut, that everyone is going to be paying attention. Even Perk's stream, he's streaming today. He's getting way more viewers than he normally would because people want to see him in an entirely new role, and obviously people want to see caps playing on a team with Perks. So if you're looking at it from an organizational standpoint for G2, they definitely won the offseason because they made tons of news, and everyone is talking about this new roster, which is exactly what Ocelot wants to see. And this is a team that is not, does not shy away or isn't accustomed to being the villain, playing that villain role. They already did in earlier iterations of their squad, and when they quote-unquote poached Sven and Mithy from Origin, they were already the villains at that point. So if you're looking from G2's point of view, they definitely won the offseason. And again, bringing in two of the best carries in the entire Western scene, you'd be hard-pressed to say that they didn't make the best moves out of any team in Europe heading into 2019, even with the huge, and I mean huge, amount of risk that comes with, again, role swapping in 2018 when these professional players are so developed in the role that they've been playing for so many years. But I still think that means G2 did win the offseason. Really, the only other team that you could compare and say had close to as good moves off the riffs are the likes of Misfits, bringing in a whole bunch of new faces. And anytime you're getting a 3-time LCK champion, a world finalist, 2-time semi-finalist in with Gorilla, this is the year we've seen not journeyman, somewhat washed up Korean players heading to the Western scene. These are guys playing at their peak and some of the very best in their position on the entire planet coming over. So Misfits getting Gorilla, absolutely massive. So as I know losing Alfari, a lot of fans are probably not happy about, and he was obviously one of the premier top laners in EU, but you got yourself the best Western top laner of all time in SOAS, so that's at the very worst a side grade, I think, for Alfari. And when it comes to playoffs, that's going to be an upgrade because we know the patented SOAS playoff buff always comes into effect. And Febivin coming back to EU, if you scratch out the 2018 summer split he had in North America, You go back to 2017 summer and 2018 spring, he was a top 3 mid laner from whatever region he would be playing in, and he was still an all-pro mid laner during his last split in EU, so that is a huge upgrade for Misfits over Senkux, which means they're getting an upgrade in support in the mid lane and probably in the top lane. And anytime you're getting 3 upgrades, or at least 2, and a side grade heading into the offseason, obviously that is a massive surplus for your squad. And again, if you want to look at it from the Misfits organization point of view in terms of how many new fans you're bringing into your organization, the likes of Fevivin has a big following, obviously Soaz is a massive following, and Gorilla coming in from the LCK. I mean, people are just going to be interested in seeing how he fits into this lineup and playing in Europe. We know his English isn't too bad, so that shouldn't be a huge issue implementing him into the lineup. Misfits, I mean, for the potential that G2 has, I feel like Misfits would be a safer bet to say that they won the offseason because there's almost no risk. Really, the riskiest move you could say they made was probably bringing in Gorilla. But, I mean, if they're losing Mickey to G2 anyways, they had to make a move. So it's not a huge risk because Gorilla has shown that he is, again, one of the best supports on the entire planet. The only risk you're having is bringing in someone whose native language isn't English. But, I mean, that's kind of the theme in EU. Most guys, their second language is English. So I don't see that being a huge issue for them. So really, because it's not as big a risk, you could argue that Misfits have actually had a better offseason than G2. Then you talk about a team that only made 1 move, but should be a huge improvement, is Vitality bringing in Mowgli, which should be massive for them. Again, another guy who speaks English pretty well. It's not like he speaks none of it. He has done some interviews in English, so again, shouldn't be a huge issue. And Kikis was the main weakness for Vitality at Worlds 2018, but when you're only changing 1 player, don't think you can say you won the offseason. And there's still plenty of teams and rosters to be filled out in EU. You've got XL, who still, I mean, they basically have Kasing. There's a lot of rumored players that will be showing up on that roster, but only Kasing confirmed right now. I'm sure there's not enough big name players left for some of these rosters to fill out to make a bigger impact than the likes of G2 or Misfits. But for now, heading into 2019, Misfits definitely made the safer choices and look like they should be a top 3 team. But G2 has got to win the offseason because they have the potential to be the best Western team in 2019 and really make some noise on the international stage with 2 of the best carries in all of Western League of Legends.